Hello and welcome to this session, and in this session we shall continue our understanding of the important software terminologies. Well, in this session particularly we will have to understand as to what we really mean by a development environment. We will also have to understand as to what we mean by a production environment and what really the difference between these two environments is. But then you have already in the previous session understood the concepts such as build, deploy and release. Well, in many ways the process of build is associated with the development environment, and that way the processes of deployment and release are in some way associated with the production environment. So what really does all of this mean is what we really have to understand in this session. So let me proceed. You know that all of these happen to be the various phases that are associated in the software development life cycle. Well, that way, out of all of these phases, you have already understood a little bit about the coding phase and also the deployment phase. I shall be speaking about the other phases in great detail moving forward, but then my focus now is on particularly these three phases. Yes, the design phase, the coding and the testing phase. Well, if really all of these activities have to happen seamlessly, then we shall be requiring an environment, and that environment is what we refer to as the development environment. Well, if that's confusing, let me give you an analogy. Say supposing you have a seed, but then you want to grow that seed into a full-grown plant. Then obviously the seed, if it has to transform itself into a full-grown plant, then it would require a certain environment. It would require sunlight, it would require fertile soil which contains sufficient manure, and obviously it would require water as well. In other words, what I mean to say is that if and only if you provide the right kind of an environment or the right kind of an ecosystem for the seed, only then the seed can sprout and then grow into a full-grown plant. Well, if really a seed requires an environment, if it has to develop into a plant, then let me tell you that using the same analogy, that if you really want to develop an idea into a full-grown software product, then you will also require an environment. Well, it is that environment which has to be present in the developer's computer, which shall enable the developer to efficiently design, to efficiently code and test his product. Then that kind of an environment which is present on the developer's computer is what we refer to as the development environment. In fact, it is the development environment which actually prepares the software product. Well, I shall be speaking about the deployment and maintenance at a later point in time, but then what I really wanted you to understand is that it is the development environment which is present on the developer's computer that enables the developer to be preparing the fully functional software product. But then the kind of development environment that should be present on the developer's computer depends upon the kind of software product that the developer is creating. What I mean to say is that just in case the developer is interested in creating a web application or a web app, well, if really the final software product that is being created is a web application, then it means that the developer should be having a web development environment on his computer. Well, some of the popular web development environments are the Node.js development environment or the Ruby on Rails development environment. Well, at this point, how to really make use of these development environments to prepare the web application is something that you shall be learning moving forward. But at this point, what I wanted you to understand is that the developer cannot have whatever kind of development environment on his local system. Depending on the kind of software product that he is intended to produce, that he should be having a suitable kind of a development environment. And in this instance, if he is interested in producing web applications, then obviously web development environment is what should be present on his local system. But then just in case the developer is interested in producing mobile applications, then obviously a web development environment should not be there on his system. Rather, what the developer should be having is the mobile app development environment. Well, that way, if the developer is interested in producing Android apps, then he need to be having Android Studio, which is a popular mobile app development environment. And just in case the developer is interested in producing iOS app, then he should not be having the Android Studio mobile app development environment. Rather, he should be having the Xcode app development environment. Well, Apple's Xcode app development environment happens to be such a mobile app development environment using which you can be creating iOS apps. All said and done, what I really wanted you to understand through this interaction is that if an idea or a design has to sprout and get transformed into a software product, then obviously that idea or the design needs to be coded, needs to be tested, and if all of these activities have to happen seamlessly and in a coordinated fashion without frustrating the developer much, then obviously there is a need for a development environment. Hope I'm clear with this. But then what is a production environment? Let me explain. Once the software developer, by making use of the development environment, has prepared a fully functional software product, you know that the next phase is to deploy it on the cloud server. After all, if and only if that the software product is deployed on the cloud server, that it shall actually be available for use by the end users. But then the environment that the developer had on his local system when he was developing the application would definitely be different from that of the environment on the cloud server. After all, the purpose of the cloud server is to ensure that the software product that has been deployed upon that is now accessible and usable by millions of users, and hence the environment on the cloud server, that is the production environment, would definitely be different from that of the environment that was there on the local computer of the developer. So let me explain all of this to you through an example. Assume that the developer has made use of a web development environment such as the Node.js or the Ruby on Rails and has actually created a website. Now, website happens to be a web application, which means that this website, if it really has to be accessible and used by millions of users, then if that website is present on the local system of the developer, it is obviously of no use. In fact, this website needs to be hosted, or in other words, it needs to be deployed on a website hosting server. After all, there are a lot of such website hosting servers such as AWS, such as Google Cloud, and also Microsoft Azure. In fact, all of these web hosting servers ensure that the website that is developed by the developer is live and is accessible for millions of users on the internet. In fact, it is this environment that we technically refer to as the production environment. And let me tell you that if and only if the software product is present on the production environment, that it is ready for release and that the users can actually download it and install it on their respective systems. So all said and done, let me in a tabular format tell you as to what really is the difference between the development environment and the production environment. In as far as the primary users of the development environment is concerned, it is basically the developers or the coders who make use of it. Even the testers and the QA teams as well make use of it. Well, that way, what really is the role of a tester and what really are the roles of the QA teams is something that I shall be telling you moving forward. But basically, it is professionals playing these job roles that actually would require the development environment. But then the production environment is something that is more relevant for the end users. It is more relevant for the customers or the clients of that software product. Well, that way, in as far as the purpose of the development environment is concerned, as you already know, it is basically used to design, it is used to code and test the software product. But then the production environment definitely is not for designing, coding or testing. Rather, the production environment ensures the operational live use of the software product by the end users. Well, that way, in as far as the data and the traffic volume is concerned, in the development environment, the developers and the testers shall make use of the sample test data and shall also artificially induce traffic to check if really the software product can handle high volumes of traffic. But then in the production environment, it is not the sample data. It is the actual data and the real user traffic is what really the production environment needs to handle. And also, in as far as the aspect of backup and recovery is concerned during the development environment, since there is no actual data that is involved in the process, that there is a lesser emphasis on backup and recovery planning. But then in the production environment, you know that after all, the end users would have given their actual data, and hence a comprehensive backup and recovery strategy is what that needs to be formulated in the production environment. So all said and done, the development environments such as the Node.js or the Ruby on Rails ensure that all of these expectations of the development environment. Similarly, the production environments such as the AWS or the Google Cloud or the Microsoft Azure ensure that all of these aspects related to making the software product go live and accessible to the millions of users are concerned. So I'm sure that in this session, not only have you understood as to what really a development environment and a production environment is, I'm sure you have also understood that the process of build is more or less associated with the development environment, and that deployment and release are associated with the production environment. Hope this session was informative, and if you'll really have to be a successful software developer, then it is important for you to master all the terminologies and the concepts that are associated with software development. And if you'll really have to achieve it, all that you have to do is to continue watching this video series. Hope this session was informative. Meet you in my next session.